Hello,
Hello.
having some video issues, so give me a moment real quick.
Video issues.
You guys can see me there. Yeah, I have only five cameras.
Hello, Josh.
The,
Hey,
the right
Clive, how
one's
you
out.
doing?
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
Well, great privilege. Thank you for coming on. So, I was made aware of your dad a few years ago, I don't know how many. And
Hmm.
since then, I've been fascinated with this sort of work, particularly about 20 years ago, I interviewed MJ Pangman. Have you come across her? She
Well, that one.
wrote the book Dancing with Water.
Hmm.
And as I looked into the water thing, I got to interview Vader Austin,
Hmm.
and it struck me that your work is pretty sort of on the same lines in a way.
Yeah. She gave us a couple pages in her new book.
All right,
Very nice. Yes.
all right, excellent.
Yes, we're at the very end, so I like to think she saved the best for last.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions at the beginning. I'm sure over the years you've done loads of tests, and it struck me, well, what would be a good test? Well, let's say you had 100 women who want to go for a pregnancy test. If you tested those 100 women and then by perhaps seeing an embryo in the magnified blood, you could work out actually how many of them were pregnant at the end of the day and how accurate your predictions were. Presumably you've done
Mhm.
some experiments sort of along those lines, maybe.
Yeah. It was Dad was excellent at it. It's easier for me as they're a little farther along because, the size of what we see in the blood will correlate to the size of it in the body. But Dad would actually tell people whether it was going to be a boy or a girl. And
Wow.
well, he was wrong once, though. It looked like a boy, but kids are being born so confused these days that who knows what the real story was. But generally, if we do have a pregnant female, you will see it. But it's easier as you get a few months into it. Dad was really good at early stages picking it up. And I've been doing this for 25 years and I've gotten better at it. But for me, they need to be a couple months along for me to really see it accurately in the blood.
Okay. So if you were to guess at the percentage success rate of predictability, what would you guess it is?
Oh, that's a good question. I always yelled at my dad for using percentages on anything. No. I would say there's a pretty consistent correlation.
Yeah.
Occasionally you would have a pregnant female and you wouldn't see the baby in the blood. And some of that had to do if they were on pharmaceuticals or if they weren't quite present, if that makes sense. So for people who are checked out emotionally, there's very few things that are going on in the blood. So it's like you're looking at the blood of a zombie. But I would say the majority of the time, if there weren't pharmaceuticals involved and the person was present, you would see the fetus in the blood. But I wasn't schooled enough to tell him whether it was going to be a boy or a girl.
Wow. So, for the benefit of people who don't know the work that you do, perhaps we could go to whatever stage of the beginning you feel like getting to so people can get right into the nitty-gritty of how incredible what you're doing is.
Sure. It's
Sure.
probably good to start with Dad's background, and I think you can probably take it on that, Adam.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for us, it's been a fun journey, Clive. It's been interesting to say the least, right? We're all here living the human experience. I keep saying that like I'm some alien. But Dad's experience, he was very high functioning. His brain definitely worked different. Fourth grade, he took a math placement test and he did the 12th grade test by mistake and he got 100% and didn't show any work. So, of course, he was accused of cheating. So the teachers gave him another test, which he got 100% on and didn't show any work again. So, and even my brother, my sister, and I, all of us cried as children with our dad trying to help us with our math homework because we didn't see it like him. He would, don't you get it? We don't get it, Dad. It doesn't make sense to us. So he was very unique. He did things like medical school, he'd ask questions and they would say, read the book. And his response was, I think the book is wrong. And then he questioned his schooling. He got drafted to Vietnam, and he questioned his government. We know about lies that the government was telling about what was going on in Vietnam. So he questioned his government. He questioned his schooling. As he was in Vietnam, his hospital, he was an eye surgeon, so eyes came last. So he was actually head of mass casualties. So when the helicopters would land, he would decide who they could help and who they couldn't. So who lived and who died, basically. And his hospital in a time of war had a 98% survival rate. And that was not happening in the United States in these nice fancy hospitals without war going on. So he questioned a lot of things as he was growing up. When he came back to the States after Vietnam, he became the rich eye surgeon he'd always wanted to be. He had everything he had ever wanted. When Josh and I were kids, Dad had the Porsche and the Jaguar. We didn't have art on the walls. We had artists paint on our walls. All right. So Dad had stuff. I remember it was so much fun as a kid. We would have potato chips delivered to the house and cookies delivered, and we didn't have soda. My dad would get soda water and different syrups, and we'd make our own soda. My dad was fat, grape nuts, not even in my vocabulary. So eating sugar, and my dad had everything he ever wanted, and he was near suicidal. He was not happy. And at one point, someone came to him for a consultation, eye surgery, and he recommends surgery because that's what he knows. And the person says, I'm going to try something, this alternative method. And Dad says, great, whatever. And the person did it, and she got better. So our father, as a scientist, he went to learn this new technique so he could help people. And someone came to his office, same issue. He was excited to do this new technique, the retrobulbar injection. They push the eyeball to the side, and with this curved needle, they go behind and they inject natural remedies. And the person had been to 5 other doctors who couldn't help her.
6.
6, sorry. 6 other doctors who couldn't help her. This is why Josh is here. So she got better. And she went to all those doctors and said, hey, this doctor fixed me. And every one of those doctors turned our father into the medical board. They did not care the person got better. All right. The ego said, what do you mean I didn't do it and someone else did? So this was not the last time our father would get in trouble for helping people. As his life went on, he eventually picked up the whole family. We went from Princeton, New Jersey, where he was the rich eye surgeon. We went to Scottsdale, Arizona, and we traded the Porsche and the Jaguar for a Datsun and a Blazer. And Dad took a huge cut in pay so he could learn to help people. And he was thrilled. This was the 80s. Anyone could call themselves a homeopath. As he learned, he saw some awesome things. And he got together with some of his friends, and Arizona was the first state that had a law that separated the AMA from the HMA, the AHMA, the American Holistic Medical Association. Our father wrote that law. He created the American Holistic Medical Association. He was the first president, and he gave out the first homeopathic medical licenses in the United States. So these were people that had medical background and then went into homeopathy. So what he did was basically make sure the homeopaths have anatomy background. There's some consistency. He really legitimized homeopathy in Arizona and then in the United States, because other states followed suit with this precedent that he set. So he did great things, changed things. At one point, he got to travel around the world to see different treatments and therapies in different places, and he ended up with Gaston Naissons in Canada. Famous physicist, microscopist. This is the guy working with the dark field microscope. He's seeing symbionts, somatids, microzymas like Wilhelm Reich, the bions. He's seeing life in the blood. And when our father visited him, it was the first time in our father's medical career he had ever seen the blood live. Because Western medicine stains the blood. They just fix it for immortality, and they can always go back to that slide and see it. So he was thrilled. He said he got chills looking into this microscope. There were things there moving he'd never seen before in his whole life, and he needed to know. He said, there's something going on there, and he was excited. And he came back to where we were in Arizona, and I got sick. I was going away to college in a week, and I got mononucleosis so bad I was showing minor signs of hepatitis. This is the crash course, right? So I'm sick. I can't go to college. I want to go to college. My dad saw this microscope. He got one. He doesn't know what to do with it. So somehow he finds a German doctor, Dr. Friedrich Ploeg, living on an Indian reservation in Arizona, and he works with the microscope. So he brings the guy in to work with me. Turns out this guy flew in the Luftwaffe. He was an ex-Nazi. Okay, my dad, our father, is a Brooklyn Jewish guy. So you now have, and I remember this, my throat was so swollen I couldn't breathe. I just wanted someone to cut a hole here so I could breathe. And I have this guy, here's the ex-Nazi and here's my dad, and there's this big needle. He took some blood from me, mixed it with some remedies. He had me hold it in my hand and think happy thoughts and shot it with a laser. And then he injected my tonsils. He put some of the remedy into my buttocks, and he said to my dad, "Your son he'll be fine. He can go to college." Next day, my white cell count was down like a miracle. My swelling was down. The coloring of the tonsils was different. I could breathe. 4 days later, I went to college. And my dad said to this doctor, "You're going to come work in my office." So he brought Dr. Plogue into the office, and this is late 80s, 1988. And all of a sudden, the cast of Dallas and Dynasty are coming to see into my dad's office. Farrah Fawcett and Ryan O'Neal, they're coming to see this doctor because they know him. And they follow him around, and when the award ceremonies come up, he does regenerative stuff with them, and they look pretty, and they look young. So Dad's thinking, something's going on here. He tried to study Plogue's work. Happened a little bit, but Dr. Plogue went back to Germany when the Berlin Wall came down to find his family. And Dad was a little lost. And at that point, we don't believe in coincidences. This 4 foot tall German woman walks in the door of the office with high heels, big red hair, a flowing cape, and a diamond encrusted cigarette holder. And she says, "I am here." We have no idea who this woman is, but she works with the microscope. So she starts to work with our dad, our father, and she's actually coaching him. She's working with him. At one point, they're sitting with a patient, and she says to the patient, "When did you break your arm?" And the patient says, "I never told you I broke my arm." So my dad says, "Can you excuse us? I need to talk to the doctor." And he says, "How did you know that?" And she points in the microscope, and there's an image that looks like a broken arm. So my dad he's very skeptical, right?
He's very left brain also. He's very left brain also.
Right. So he sees these things, and he doesn't understand, but she does this for over a year in his office. All right. She keeps seeing these things show up. And Dad's got the kidney patient there. They've been to the kidney specialists all around the world. And she looks in the blood and sees the structure is out of alignment, putting pressure on the kidney. The kidney's not the problem. It's the result. So Dad starts to believe this after about a year. She's seeing true root cause, not root cause, because everyone's talking about root cause, all right? True root cause, and then as they address what they see in the microscope, the person's symptoms change. Digestive issues, we don't necessarily see the stomach and the intestines. Structures out of alignment, putting pressure on things. So take pressure off things and things start to shift. So this is the basics of what our father did. He found this method of looking at the blood with this microscope that nobody in the world is doing. And we actually hired private detectives to try to find out where these two German people learned from, and we don't know. All right, we traced her education to a 3rd grade education. That was it. We believe that they learned these things during Holocaust while the Germans were experimenting on our relatives. They had human subjects to work with, okay? So whatever went on with Dad, he took this and he ran with it. He's using natural remedies, he's using natural treatments, he's looking at the blood, addressing what he sees in the blood, and people's lives are changing. So that's the basics of it. Now, at this point too, I'll tell you, Clive, as Dad's doing awesome things, he gets in trouble for helping people. Medicare, I just said this story before, Medicare came to him as a big insurance thing in the United States and says, "You should offer Medicare for your patients." And Dad says, "I do something different. I don't know how to code it." So they tell him how to code it. And 2 months later, he's brought up on charges of Medicare fraud based on those codes. All right? Conspiracies are very interesting till they happen to you. Our father was brought up on charges of illegible handwriting as a doctor. The judge laughed at that. I know you got you muted, so he can't hear you.
That's never happened before.
Ever.
No. No.
Dad
Well,
said,
with the Medicare charges, though, what was it? 100 some odd counts totaling what? $3,500, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was a felony, and he was forced to give up his license.
Right.
At that point, Senator Bill Frist had a $600 million Medicare misdemeanor charge.
Yeah.
So it was the lowest felony conviction rate in history for that amount of money. And he was forced to. So he was obviously targeted. And yeah, Adam and I are not in a conspiracy thing anymore because once it happens to you, we just don't care. So I believe in Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster. That's my conspiracy type of theories I like. Other than that, once it happens to you, you have much less interest in it. But he was brought up on charges later on for curing somebody illegally.
Yeah.
And even in their own notes from the meeting, they said they don't care whether the patient got better or not. They care only that they didn't do things their way scientifically. So it's
Right.
documented from the medical board that they didn't care about the patient at all.
Yeah.
Charges of illegible handwriting.
Yeah.
So he joked about one of the few things he actually learned in medical school, because he said he learned nothing about health in medical school. One of the few things he learned is they taught him how to do a crappy signature, a lousy signature, so your signature could not be traced.
And you're going to write so many prescriptions, you got to be quick about it too. So,
Right.
but yeah, his journey was really interesting. He wanted to help people. We know the AMA doesn't care about you. We wrote a book, Medical Conspiracy in America. For people listening, I think it's $5. You can find it for free out there too. I know they don't care about your health. Dad was brought up on those charges. At one point, there was one of his cases, and they brought in Andrew Weil to testify against him as an expert witness. And they gave him behind closed doors transcripts of them saying, we need to get rid of Bigelsen. And when Andrew Weil got on the stand, he said, you need to drop this case or I'm taking these transcripts to Time Magazine. And they dropped the case. So it was a really interesting journey. All he wanted to do was help people. At one point, he gave up his medical license. He went to Mexico. Even he created that medical board, the homeopathic medical board. And when he went to them and said, I need a license, they said, go get one in Mexico. They wouldn't, the people he saved wouldn't help him. Right. So we went to Mexico. Dad was very famous for his cancer work. And the reason he was able to cure cancer is because Mexico let him do it. It's big money in the United States. There are cures out there, and they don't want you to know these things. And I do believe that was part of the last 4 years of them making doctors heroes. Our job, Josh and I, what we do is we educate and empower people so they can learn to take charge of their health care. And that's a threat to doctors. They don't want you doing those things.
It's a threat to their money, is what it is.
Yeah, it's the money thing. And it's really, in the end, we see physical issues, energetic issues, emotional issues. We have images that match anatomy books. Western medicine says it's dirt on the microscope, but that piece of dirt happens to match your x-ray. We have dirt that matches sonograms, and things like that too. So it's been a journey and a half, to say the least. I love what we do because when you hear what we say, you'll never think the same again. And the reality is, we know from people like Tom Cowan that no one makes you sick. We've come to the conclusion the only thing that's contagious is fear, stupidity, and laughter and yawning. That's what's contagious, right? So no one makes you sick and no one cures you, right? We would just support the system. If we can give the body the gentle nudges, then it does awesome things.
That's even what Dad would say, the arrogance of the
amazing.
doctor that think they can cure anybody. Right? All you can do is support the body so it can take care of itself.
Yeah.
40 years ago, I was in hospital with rheumatoid arthritis. I could no longer walk or get dressed or anything. And they said, oh, you've got an autoimmune disease. And they wanted to give me drugs. I soon, after about 3 weeks in hospital, I realized that I was nutrient deficient, and that's what it was, and toxically poisoned. I'd just taken an antibiotic. It's about 3 months before I became type 1 diabetic as well. And so there's so many people out there who don't realize that what they say is autoimmune disease is, oh, I'm really sorry I poisoned you with the drugs and vaccines I gave you.
Yep.
But actually, what I'm going to say is it's your fault.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
what Dad would say. Autoimmune was one of his Orwellian words.
Yeah.
He said the body's never going to attack itself. He says autoimmune is what the doctor labels you with when they have no idea what's wrong with you.
Or they do
your
have
fault.
an idea and they know it's them that did it.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's another one too, Clive. Our dad was very interested in history and he saw patterns in so many things. And he said, in the United States, the lifespan of the average MD is 6 years lower than that of the average American. And his response to that was, after practicing as long as they have, deep down, they got to know they're full of crap.
Well,
You
he
can't
came
do
to the
these things.
conclusion too. We teach a lot about homotoxicology, and he was convinced that the toxin in the word homotoxicology was doctors.
Yeah.
Right. Stay away from the doctor. They did a study with people that live to be over 100, and one thing they have in common is they don't go for regular checkups.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doctor's always going to find something wrong with you. That's his job.
They're
And no,
trauma surgeons, you break your arm, you have an accident, that's what they're there for. You know,
Exactly.
outside of that, you stay out of their hands if possible.
yes,
There,
definitely.
there was a woman who was interviewed recently who lived to whatever it was, 120 something. And she said, well, what would you have told your younger self? And she said, well, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have looked after myself better.
Right. We talk about this. Mom says she's going to live as long as she wants to, depending on how her body does, you know. And living in Mexico, Clive, I know multiple people that have someone in their family that's over 100 years old. It's
And
amazing.
yeah, I mean, here when I was doing consultations, I used to get clients from Nigeria, and I had one lady, maybe 85 or something, and she was brought up so far into the interior that they didn't know sea existed.
Wow.
I said to her, well, salt, didn't you need that? And she said, well, we didn't know salt existed either. But what we used to do, we just took the ashes from yesterday's fire. We'd always put all the waste veg and stuff in there, add that to the next day's food, and that was their salt.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The things we can learn from these people, right? Josh, we had at one point, we had some Native American patients, and it was interesting because Josh would ask questions, and what was their response, Josh?
Dad always had a really nice big Native American following wherever he went. And I'd always ask him questions about health related questions, and they would never give you an answer.
Yeah.
And they would say, the white man has taken pretty much everything from us, so we need to keep some secrets to ourselves. And I understood. And but one, finally, a nice Mohawk gentleman said lobelia, that they included lobelia with almost every medicinal remedy they used because it enhanced the strength of the actual other remedies. So that was really the only thing I got. And I said, okay, if I add it to my food, will it enhance the flavor? He said, no. Indigenous cultures, as much as, Dad had to define the word holistic for the actual Arizona Medical Dictionary because they didn't know what the word holistic meant, right? And we try to do everything as natural as we can, but we live in a modern society, and indigenous cultures can live off the land much easier than we can these days. The indigenous culture isn't getting hit by cars or having their gallbladder removed or having a dentist beat on them. So we keep everything natural, but this is where we add things like osteopathy into the equation. Somebody to start to work on the body, maybe listen to lymphatic drainage, work on the scar tissue. And that's something that the indigenous cultures really didn't have to deal with. So they could live off the land much easier. Whereas we need a little bit more help because of where society has taken us.
Right. Even for the food, as you talk about with supplements and things, our food, the corn, our body doesn't even recognize corn these days. It's come so far away from where it was originally.
And all the minerals are missing. I think corn is one of those examples where like 95% of all the nutrition is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, corn's funny because it's one of those things you can chew it up no matter how much you chew it, it comes out whole. There
Well,
was a Disney movie or something and they're on the boat throwing up and the dog is throwing up and they're like, where did he get corn from? It comes right through. It's
well, the
kind of
thing is,
interesting.
it all starts in the soil. And we've been working with a lot of regenerative farmers here, and they said they've never ever actually seen a truly deficient nutrient soil ever. What's deficient is the microbiology to process the nutrients,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So, they need the microbiology, and we're sterilizing the world at this point in time. So there's always nutrients in the soil, and the soil on the ground is no different than the soil in our body. It is the same symbiosis that's going on. So we have our internal soil, which is, one of the harder points that we're trying to get across with people, that the way things evolve in the soil is the same way it evolves in our body, right? So in our body, we need the microbiology, we need the bacteria. We do have the nutrients to some degree in the minerals, but if you don't have the bacteria to process it, it just sits there bound. And then obviously the food is the gas you're putting into your engine. So if the food is deficient and we don't have the microbiology to process what's already there, then we become really, really deficient. So
Right.
it's all about supporting the terrain just as much as we want to support the external terrain. It's no different than our internal terrain. So we have to support those germs in the soil. We got to support those germs in our body. The same
Right.
thing is we've never met a farmer who's disappointed when they say worms in their garden, right? So why would it be any different in our body? The parasites in the soil are there to help process the bacteria and the nutrients and then create the oxygen channels for things to flow through. The same exact thing in our body. And there's such a big deal right now where parasites are the cause of all of our sickness and everybody's doing a parasite cleanse. And what they're doing is they're actually working against the terrain. So when we have an areas of stagnation and the bacteria are like our body's vacuum cleaner. they're going there cleaning up all the garbage. But if they can't break through the disturbance field, whether it's this injury or a scar or something like that, the bacteria back up and then they become out of balance. This is where they would call them pathogenic, but we don't believe in pathogens. We believe that things are out of balance is what's going on. So at that point, then the body creates the parasite to keep the bacteria in line. At the same time, the parasites are cleaning your mucous membranes, which is really important too. The parasite's waste product is now going to be nutrients for your body also. So it's a very beautiful process that's going on. So if we're trying to kill our germs, we're trying to kill our parasites, we're actually interrupting a natural process, and we're leaving a weakened body without its, buddies to help clean things up. So we need to be supporting this terrain as opposed to attacking it, which is tends to be what we're doing in the traditional medicine. And even here in the United States, alternative medicine, everything is about anti this and anti that as well. And they're kind of going down the wrong path. We have a lot of green allopaths here, is what we call them. So they're using natural remedies, but they're just it's still a traditional medicine allopathic pasteur point of view. Whereas we're the exact opposite. We want to support the terrain so it's going to balance out your microbiology and give you what you need so the body can process what it needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and for us it's interesting, Clive, because words are power. So we believe when you take something natural and you call it anti, that you're actually affecting the energy of that thing. So for us, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, we've got pro-regulatory.
Yeah,
It's
good
just
point.
a little bit of a shift there. And it's we see physical issues in the blood. There's blocks in the body, and then toxicity has a difficult time getting out of the experience. So we want to remove the blocks. We want the energy to flow. Emotions are important to us because emotions can create tension, and then we can have blocks because of that. So this is the holistic integrative experience. Your liver condition, as far as we're concerned, could be your body out of alignment, putting pressure on the liver. It could be energy potentially to the liver if you've got a tooth with a meridian that's affecting that is one thing. It could be the emotion if you've got an anger experience going on. And the reality is, if the liver is affected, it's not efficient. Typically, there's some pressure on it. Like Josh said, the food that we eat is not great. The attitude with what we eat our food most of the time in the United States is get in your car and shovel your food down while you get to work. So all these little things really just create some type of stagnation in the body, and then things can't get out. So if we could do these little nudges, when we introduce something into the body, we're doing small dose stuff. We were doing homeopathics for a long time, and then isopathics, which are live germs and fungals, live bacterials and fungals. So it's like treats like, but little things to stimulate the system, and then the system starts to kick back in. And it's really, the terrain is interesting for us. It's all connected. Your environment. If you don't like your job, that's going to affect your experience. If you're not happy in the neighborhood you're in, that's going to affect your experience. If you're under those fluorescent lights all day and things like that. This is all part of it. The physical, the energetic, the emotional, and one of the biggest ones is the spiritual experience. If you don't believe you can get better, there's nothing we can do for you. Right? Things right? Someone told you at one point, no, autoimmune, and this is what you got to do, and you didn't believe that. You did something different, and look where you ended up, in a better spot, and even in a better spot, having learned something where you can share that with people. This is where we go spiritually also. We're very objective with what we do. We like to be very hard with our science and rigorous, and things like this. But we border on this airy-fairy, wooey-wooey, because there's some really good science to these things. Law of attraction is very real. The emotions create energy, and the emotions are a big deal, and we're emotional beings, right? So you can't just go, one pill is going to fix everything. You got to have the right intention there, right? You have to believe you can get better. And like I said, if you don't believe it, nothing we can do for you. And I really think when we do our consultations with people, it's fun for me to hold their hand. I coach them more or less, and I talk to them over time, and watching them get it because it makes sense, and then giving people things they can act on, and then seeing change. I enjoy what we do. I wish we could do this with everybody. Not everyone's interested,
I had an experience a little bit like you were saying. 10 years ago, I was using some old frequency devices, and I wired the poor guy up to 4 of these devices. And at the end of an hour, his pain had gone, his eyesight was now perfect, his brain fog had lifted, and I'd forgotten to switch the machines on.
Awesome.
Yep. That's fantastic. We had a lot of clients who would come in and say, "Oh, they're EMF sensitive. Can we turn off the routers?" We'd say, "Sure." We never turned off the routers, and they would calm right down. You know, so there's something to what's going on as far as the electromagnetic frequencies out there.
Yeah.
But we do see a lot of people who the mind is creating a lot of what's going on for them.
Dad had that one device, Josh, with one of his
That was
friends.
funny. He had a teacher had this really cool machine and all these lights and switches on it, and dads are like, "What do all these switches do?" He says, "Well, the on-off button works. The other ones are just for show because people like to see that."
We're strange
Yep.
creatures, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
I,
Perceived
I,
value.
I interviewed a practitioner in London, natural health practitioner, who I instantly wasn't very keen on. And he had this diagnostic device and he sort of held the rods and so on. And I bought one from him for 10 times over the price that I should have paid for it. Anyway, after about, I, I used, I went to a festival and there are hundreds of people, so I just tested everybody for free. I wanted to test out the thing. And what I realized was that each time you tested them, the results, sometimes they went down, but almost always they went up, up, up. And I realized that all you had to do was put in your name, male, female, few facts, and it could guess what, and it would, you know, so you're always doing it right, mainly. Anyway, so I went back to him and I said, I want you to test me. So he tested me, said, now I want you to test this banana. And the banana did, was me.
Awesome.
He runs out of the room crying because I've sort of exposed him.
Right.
And next thing I find out, he's still doing it. Funny.
Oh
It's
yeah, people used to
yeah.
come to us with all these fancy devices and stuff to test, and it was like we didn't see one of them really do much. It's one of those things that we were raised by osteopaths, and they're kind of a sellout in this country where only 2% of them do body work now. And a lot of them are
Really?
using, yeah, only 2%
Wow.
Yeah.
do
That's
manual
insane.
medicine.
I
This is
would have
incredible.
assumed it was like 98%.
No, when we were teaching in England, it was very different. Everybody had their osteopath, and they were real osteopaths. There was no
Yeah.
prescription pad there, so very different in the United States. But we asked about machines. He says, "Yeah, what they're playing with something because they're incapable of doing it with their own hands."
There's
Right? So,
truth to that, but I mean, some of the machines that they used to use,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
I mean, were
yeah.
incredible. I mean, there's one here, for instance.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
made by Fisher in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These were in every major hospital, curing people left, right, and center. They used to teach doctors how to do it.
Yep. They
And
did.
and the
That's
smaller ones as well.
nice. Those are fun. My girlfriend she's a research scientist, and she's the electrical girl. She's worked with all the devices. Her PhD was originally trying to do an electrical antibiotic, and she realized that wasn't the way things work. But right now, you've probably heard about the Tesla device that just came out, right?
What, Jeff
It,
Berwick's thing?
yeah, Jeff
Yeah.
Berwick and Max Egan and
Um,
David Icke is
I
talking.
talked to the inventor with Jeff and my
Oh,
pet inventor, and yeah, I've known Jeff for years. I used to speak at an Acapulco and stuff.
uh-huh,
But I mean, on the one hand, the big machine over there is so powerful you can lie somebody on a bed of metal with an insulator and hold a rod, and you can fix the whole body at once. Um, but I mean, obviously Jeff's having great success with his. I'm not happy with his twirly light bulbs
yeah, that's
where
funny.
they put
Right,
the
right.
mercury in there.
Or the
But
Sure.
cost.
Yeah.
the results I've had with the old ones, the original Tesla devices, I've got a video online where I got 34 people out of pain in a row in less than 5 minutes with each one, with
Neat.
a 100-year-old piece of kit.
Well, and I was going to say that it's, my girlfriend's got the Lakovsky device.
Oh, nice.
This is not new technology. And part of it is, not sure who you spoke to. Do you know the name Amenophis? Have you heard that guy at all?
No,
No. So that technology is out there for free, the
really.
schematics and the schematics and
Oh, yeah,
plans and everything.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because we went to Anarchapulco and I have people. I just did a consultation with someone before Anarchapulco. We did the blood for her, and the last question she asked was unrelated to the health. She said, "Hey, Do you know how to deal with cryptocurrency? I said, no, but my friend does. You know, why? She says, I'm trying to get this device. And I looked it up and I'm laughing because my girlfriend just got one for free. One of her friends built it and sent it to her. And our client is trying to borrow $5,000 from a friend. She wants this thing, and the reality is we could send her one, and we're not going to charge her $11,000 for it. And the thing is, the guy that even the Zamenhofis who put everything out there for free, he got pissed because everyone's trying to sell this thing for thousands of dollars now. So either way, we have one. We're starting to do some observations. So I'm looking at some blood before and after, and Anna's got some, like the BioWell device and some other devices. So we're doing some things to measure and check. Interesting experience. The funny thing is this. Someone said to my girlfriend, if you have a device that costs you $400, the cure will last a day or two. If you have a device that costs $1,000, then your cure will last a little longer. If you have a device that costs you $10,000, $20,000, your cure will last you even longer. So for us, everyone's getting cured. And my response is, well, until I see and get to play with myself, I do have to tell people that the placebo effect is very powerful.
Yeah.
You know,
I wonder if that's why the EE system gets good reviews.
the EE system, you know, that's another one Anna will talk about too. It's one of the most popular experiences out there. I haven't seen much with it. You know, with what we look at, and it's still, we're not here to burst people's bubble. We want people to be excited and find things that help. But Josh and Dad, how often people would come into the office, I found this, yay, let's check it. And Josh and Dad would check and see nothing. So to the point where they stopped checking these things because they didn't want to burst people's bubble.
Well, even when Dad was doing his cancer work, you know, and he had a 50% turnaround of stage 4 alone when he was in Mexico because he was allowed to do his things. And even then, there's always the fad of the week in review. In the 90s, it was shark cartilage. Well, because sharks don't get cancer, you know, and Dad's like, well, a rock doesn't get cancer. It doesn't mean it's going to cure your damn cancer, you know. But there was always the fad of the week in review going on. But there's a lot of things that will kill your cancer. But it's going to come right back because you're not fixing why it's there in the first place.
Yeah,
You know, so even with some of the devices, you know, and Anna knows them all, and we've had some devices in the past. You still got to get to that root cause to make sure those same symptoms don't come back. But a lot of those things can be very complementary. My problem is if I don't trust the messenger, I don't trust the message. And that's hard to weed through that bullshit. That's for sure. So, but yeah, absolutely. So, you know, one of the keys is you really got to figure out the cause of the issue. You know, we talk about the emotion setting up the injury, right? That we don't believe in accidents, right? So when there was a surgery and, you know, Dad was really big into surgeries causing major problems physically, energetically, and emotionally, right? But what set up the surgery in the first place, right? It wasn't the car crash. It was what was going on with you in your life that led to that car crash.
Right.
And you can always track it back. Oh, bad divorce was going on, or there was some abuse in the relationship. You know, we had one guy, we figured out why he drove his car off a cliff, right? And you could track it back to that emotional component. But here's the key, or one of the keys is once the emotion causes a physical issue, you got to work on the physical also. Too many people here are just working on the emotional, and that's just a piece to the puzzle. You can't work on the emotional if it's causing physical issues. You're never going to get the root cause. You're never going to get the body to release that emotion entirely. So let's say somebody's, you know, got an issue and they're really angry, right? So in Eastern philosophy, that's liver, right? So we're not treating the liver. Right, we're taking pressure off the liver so now they can process their anger and process their emotions.
Right.
You know, lungs, you have lung conditions. That's going to be your grief or sadness. We're not treating the lungs. We're taking pressure off the lungs. So now you can process that emotion. So there was a very big movement here, and that's still around, about, you know, trying to cure your cancer with a positive mental attitude. Well, you got to change your attitude. That's just that's a piece of the puzzle. But there's some physical work you have to do also. So I believe in praying. It's an energy. You know, but you can't just sit there in your chair and pray to God to have your disease go away while you're going back to your old habits right afterwards. So, you know, everybody's looking for the easy way out, but, you know, health is a process and disease is a process, and it all takes a little bit of work to do.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
And the work that you're doing, have you been teaching people?
That's a good question. Teaching people, yes. What we do, every consultation we do with someone is an educational consultation. So if I look at your blood, I'm teaching you. Josh and I have a couple training courses. They're based on Dad's books. The Holographic Blood book is one of our courses. Another one coming up in June, I think, is the Doctors Marvel and Germs book, which is actually the hidden side of healthcare. So with us, we used to teach the blood work, but what we've seen over the last 4 years is how people have used it in the wrong way. All right. All the graphene, hydrogel, nanotechnology people with live blood analysis are wrong. Totally wrong. We're doing another interview after this afternoon with Renette Senham, who's running for governor of California, and Chris John Northrup, and a couple other people to set the record straight. We're tired of people listening to idiots that just bought a microscope and think they know what they're talking about. All right. So we do not teach the microscope work. We do teach a little of it, but first you have to take our 13-week course because the theory and philosophy behind what we do is more important than looking at a hologram. And after you do the 13-week course, we may offer you our blood basics course, which is red cells, white cells, platelets, plasma activity, not holograms. You know, we have trust issues these days, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with this. And the reality too, Clive, is what people are doing now with the microscope. You've seen images of hydrogel and things like this, and they're so wrong. These are the images we've seen for decades, all right? And what they're doing now is doing treatments in order to detox what they're seeing in the blood and realize that what they're seeing in the blood is a hologram, all right? We take blood from capillaries, so only one red cell can fit through at a time. They're seeing these huge images and trying to detox that from your blood, and it's not in your blood. So I know someone, just the other day, we heard a text of a 39-year-old woman in Germany, mother of 3, who died on the table while they're trying to detox her. They're trying to detox something from her that's not even there. So we want to share as much as we can. Our courses are awesome. If you just read one of Dad's books, you're never going to think the same way again. And then the reality is you get the new information, you take some action based on this, and you start to see the reactions. We love teaching.
Part of the reason we're doing it that way too is, we're trying to protect the integrity of not only my father's work, but some of the greats before him. Some of that old knowledge is, people called us future medicine, Dad, future medicine. It's like, no, this is just old ways that have been forgotten, basically. So the people like Antoine Béchamp and Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, these are the people whose names were really working hard to keep alive out there. It's Rudolf Steiner, Wilhelm Reich. And we're slowly seeing a lot of their work being bastardized, for lack of a better word. Right? What they're teaching at Waldorf schools right now in the United States, for the most part, is garbage that has nothing to do with Rudolf Steiner, and it hurts our hearts basically because he's one of our heroes, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. They stopped teaching about Steiner in a lot of the local ones because of his views on vaccines. So now they're imparting their own views into Steiner's work, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So part of the reason we've seen, the blood. I've been doing it for 20 plus years, not enough since 1990. Dad did it for 25 plus years. We speak from experience, and we're very honest about what we know and honest about what we don't know. So to see some of the garbage that's been coming out the last couple of years and the following it's got, has been brutal for us to watch. It's not based on anything that's in anybody's reality that has any science behind it whatsoever. And everybody wants to learn the blood from us, but no, unless you learn the philosophy, your science is going to be crap. Right? So we need to understand, about the microbiology and how it's working. And we need to stop making guesses because it fits into your narrative. So what Adam was saying too, these big structures people are showing, we've seen for years. Dr. Enderlein in the 20s saw these structures, right? They've been around for a long time. We know a lot about what they are. What they are not is hydrogel or graphene. This is a bad guess. And it goes back to basic science, like Adam was saying. You're taking a drop of blood from a finger. It's capillary blood. Only one cell can move there through a time. The structures they're showing that we've seen for many years cannot physically be present in your blood. It is not physically possible. They are holographic images that are showing imbalances in the body. So unfortunately, you can see us getting a little fired up about it because what's going on right now is one of the greatest things about Dad's work is it took the fear of the unknown out of the person.
Yeah.
And so much is being controlled by fear these days. And these people are using this beautiful microscope that we have back here to spread fear. And what's fear going to do? It's going to put you in sympathetic mode, and you're not going to heal in sympathetic mode. So yes, for people who want to learn how the body works, we do have a couple 13-week courses that may or may not be able to take a blood basics course after that. We're very careful about who we're teaching these days because God forbid we have somebody go out there and do some stupid shit and say the Bigelsons taught us that. So
Yeah.
sorry about the rant there, Clive. But it's something that's near and dear to our hearts. So.
Yeah, no, it certainly needs to be said. Um, so, uh, if a client wanted to come and see you, somebody's really ill or something, do you see clients, or are you too you've got full books, or how
Yeah,
does
not in person anymore, which has been really good for my own well-being. I worked in my dad's clinics for a long, long time. And without having control over the treatments of the case, then it's really difficult. So what we do is we do distance consultations. They're available in the US right now and Mexico. They should be available hopefully pretty soon in England and Spain as well. But people send in blood, we take images, and we get them an educational report. It's not a very in-depth report. We're looking at very specific things. So we want to track it back to what the issue is. Obviously, we're not doctors, we can't recommend specific things, but we talk about different modalities that can help the person. So we use a lot of osteopathy, a lot of acupuncture. If people want to know a little bit about diet, we tend to get them more towards an Eastern practitioner who's going to look at their tongue and analyze. It's like turmeric I love, but if you're full of heat, turmeric is bad for you. So knowing what somebody's constitution is before you change their diet is very important. And as you very well know, nobody knows shit about diet these days, and they're all trying to tell you what's best for you based on their own beliefs, right? So we'll make specific modality recommendations, and sometimes we do have specific people to refer them to. But generally, we let them know what caused the issue and steps they can take to help it. And then Adam's there to hold their hand afterwards. He does follow-up Zoom sessions with them and explains to them if they have questions. So it's very, very educational. Not everybody needs it. I mean, a lot of times you could just read Dad's book and you'll say, oh, that's what happens. I had the bad divorce and then I broke my arm and then I got eczema around that area there. So sometimes it's pretty obvious. So as much as we're happy to look at people's blood, the education behind why we get sick in the first place is important because then people can take accountability for their own health care.
Right.
Well, absolutely brilliant. And what are the names of your dad's books so people can get them, and tell me your website and what people need to know?
Sure. We are, there's the Holographic Blood book, and the other one is Doctors Are More Harmful Than Germs. It's a great title. Did not make him a lot of friends in the medical world, that's for sure, right? But you can, if you type up our name, Bigelsen, B as in boy, Igelsen. We have the Bigelsen Academy. You'll find us there. You'll find the books there. If you type up our name, you'll find us on Quack Watch, which is where all the good doctors are. Right? We're not ashamed, right? Dad, at one point, you'll love this, Clive. One of my dad's friends, a dentist he met, a biological dentist, bought him a painting. It was a huge duck, and it said quack. And there was a button you could push, and it would quack. And Dad had that in his office. So he was definitely... He didn't care what people wanted to say about him. Quack is one of those words that we know means not something bad these days, right?
Yeah. And both of our courses are based on those books. The Holographic Blood book has all the science behind it. It has some blood work in it. It's really not about the blood, but it's all the science behind the work. So this is where getting into the Béchamps and Lamarcks and the Steiners and even some Hammer and some New German medicine, which is just a piece of the puzzle, New German medicine. It is not the only piece of the puzzle. Felt like I needed to say that. So the 13-week courses are, there's one based on that, and the second one is based on doctors are more harmful than germs. It's really not about doctors. It talks a lot about what surgeries do to the body and things that we can do about it. There is a lot more stories in that book as well. They're really, really informative. We're the worst PR people, Clive.
Yeah.
We never advertise much, and we really don't know how to do it. We have our School of Health, which is a whole $27 a month, where we do an interview a month, and then 2 weeks later we do a Q&A. And then we send different videos, whether it's breathing exercises or Qigong exercises and things like that. That's pretty awesome. We've interviewed a lot of really great people on that: osteopaths, acupuncturists, regenerative farmers. That's a really cool resource, and it's interactive. So if people want direct, attention from us, they can log into that, and it's all live, and the question and answers are a lot of fun.
Yeah, we get some fun people coming, that's for sure.
That's fantastic, and I'm so pleased to have interviewed you. And I mean, I think people are going to be blown away if they don't already know about you.
It's one of those things, Clive, when people come across us, they're like, where have you been our whole life? It's like, we've been here the whole time. We've been here Dad did this for almost 40 years. We have 100,000 plus images in our database. We've seen patterns and patterns. And David Parker and Don Lester, right?
Yeah.
So, and they're great. We had them in one of our courses. David comes to our School of Health webinars periodically. He came and talked to us about the nature of reality recently. They did research for 10 years writing that book, What
Something
Really
like
Makes
that,
You Ill,
yeah.
and they didn't come across us. So
Interesting.
sometimes you got to dig. They've kind of buried us a little bit, and we are a little weird. We do this crazy blood thing. If you know about Dr. Emoto's work, then you can find us, which is nice. Veda Austin just had her new book come out, and at the very end of the book, she put some of our pictures in there.
And
So
it's really not about the blood. The blood is so secondary. It's about the philosophy,
yeah,
right? And one of Dad's great quotes was, "Health is simple and people are complicated."
Yeah.
So all we're trying to do is educate people, so maybe they don't have to live in fear so much, and maybe they don't have to rely on a practitioner who generally doesn't know what they're doing.
right,
Well, I
right,
agree. Over the years that I've been doing this, it's got so much simpler because I used to think it was complex,
yeah,
but now it's so obvious. I mean, everybody's sort of poisoned with the same stuff, nutrient deficient in the same stuff,
Yep.
mentally poisoned by watching TV and so on. I mean, it's
oh yeah,
Yeah.
drinking poisoned water. Sorry, I need to get some water. Just hang on a second.
sure, sure. So I keep my tea handy. I'm not
Got
drinking
my
coffee, right?
biodynamic regenerative coffee
I was gonna drinking coffee. Good for you.
with
Someday
heavy
I'll
cream.
someday I'll try that. We got some new milk. We got new milk from the cow recently.
Nice. I know raw milk is still illegal here.
Crazy. So I got 3 glasses of tap water with chlorine in,
Mhm.
and I got some chlorine indicator drops like you use for swimming pools. Put a few drops in, goes bright green.
Yeah.
Next glass, same water, put my fingers in for 5 seconds and pull them out. Put the chlorine indicator drops, gone. Then I
Isn't
got
that
some
wild?
raw potato, 3 seconds, pulled it out, chlorine indicator drops, no chlorine.
Wow.
Now my
I
advice
find
to people is before you have a bath, put in a couple of pounds of potatoes.
these are the little things, Clive. This is terrain all the way, right? You know what I
Yep,
mean? Awesome. Gotta love it.
absolutely. Yes. Forget the ice bath, take a potato bath. I endorse that.
Yeah. Forget Wim Hof. We got Potato Hof now.
Well,
Awesome.
look,
Fantastic.
I'd love to speak to you again at some point and go deeper into it. But I've got the holographic blood book, but I haven't got the other one. So I'm going to get Doctors Are More Dangerous Than Germs, if I got it right.
Mhm.
And I'd love to talk to you after I've digested that.
Cool. Anytime. Josh and I, we're here as a resource. Whatever we can do to support people and motivate them and encourage them, we're happy to do. We love talking about what we do. We don't get to do it as often as you would expect. I don't get to talk about this with my friends necessarily and some of the
Oh,
extended family. We're strange people, and some of our friends are like, yeah, you guys are weird. Every once in a while they ask us questions, which is fine. So we really appreciate you bringing us on and letting us share. The biggest thing with what we do, Clive, is people don't know about us. And it's just about generating a little bit of awareness. And we're a small operation. It's just Josh and I. We've got Fiona that helps too, but we're not here to be on Oprah and things like that and have tens of thousands of people coming our way. We can't handle that.
yeah.
We're here to share the information, educate people so they can take charge of their healthcare. And as time goes on, we're finding more and more people to work with. At some point, we'll have more microscopes where we can put one in the UK and one in Canada and one in Australia, and then we can start getting the blood from all around. So, and at some point, we may be in the UK in the not too distant future. There is a microscope company that's working with us now.
Oh,
Ideally, we find the right scope. We have a lot of friends there. And
And
it's
I gotta go see another Newcastle game also. So that's worth it to go there just for that.
That's the Josh and the Newcastle games. But not far from Spain, we've got a lot of people there in Spain too. And we have a microscope in Spain now. We're trying to work with this person because then if we can get her up and running, the blood can get from UK to Spain, which is great. And UK has osteopaths. UK has resources, which is awesome. And even one of our students, we had a student, as we used to teach the blood a long time ago, was looking at some of the royalty blood. The royal family may tell people not to do these things, but they're doing them themselves, right? So this is fun stuff. We love when we get to talk about it. With what you're doing, we appreciate people like you that have had a journey, have learned something, and then you're sharing that information with people. There's a lot of people in the terrain world right now that haven't actually had the experiences. So it's nice when we find people that, something went on with their life, they changed something, they learned, they found a different way, they're in a better place, and they want to share that with people. We love to share. Not everyone's interested.
So we
And
could talk for hours, Clive. So anytime you'd like us back on, we're more than happy to talk. You just have to tell us when to be quiet.
well, thank you. And for 10 years, I used to sell microscopes, um, initially to ophthalmologists, and then iridologists, and then neurosurgeons. We
Wow.
we developed a microscope that the surgeon didn't have to refocus the microscope when he changed. So he could be using both hands, and he gripped a little thing in his mouth, and he could move it. It was just a counterbalanced
Oh,
job.
cool.
Well, maybe
Cool.
you can help us out, because the microscopes these days are garbage.
Really?
They're being geared towards the live blood community, and they've really dummied down the plasma view.
Hmm.
So they have these terrible views of the plasma. And we really delve deeply into the view of the plasma. So we've been trying to manufacture a new microscope for a long time because ours are obsolete now, and the new ones in the market are crap.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
so we'd love to talk to you more about that because maybe you have some resources you can help us with. The scope that we have is not difficult at all. Everything has changed from halogen to LED, so now they're not picking up colors on the spectrum, right? Certain colors. So the colors that we see with halogen are very important for us compared to the LED. A lot of the new scopes are not using oil condensers, so now you're losing a ton of the plasma view. So yeah, if you think you can help us, we'd love to talk to you about that because yeah, we can't recommend microscopes right now because they're garbage.
Wow. I mean, I started working in that field 40 years ago and stopped 30 years ago. Back when I was doing it, I was working with a couple of Japanese companies, but the primary stuff I was working with East German Zeiss when Zeiss was split into two, and that was when the communists were there. I first went to
Interesting.
the Zeiss factory, and they said, "Look, this is where see that patched up wall. That's where the Soviets." Desperate because they had 24 hours to rob everything before the Americans and English turned up. So what
Wow.
those holes, those are where they drove the tanks straight through the walls, took
Wow.
the machinery and physically dragged it to Russia.
Wow. That's wild. That's
Those
wild.
microscopes 30 or 40 years ago were so much better than the microscopes we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So
these
much better.
Germans were making fantastic microscopes, really
Oh
super high
yeah.
quality, not probably quite as good as the West Germans, but very close, and a quarter of the price.
Yeah,
Nice.
and they know their technology.
Well, and we've talked to some of the bigger companies. It's interesting because the bigger companies are not interested in doing anything really with dark field because most dark field microscopists are not consistent and they consider it as pseudoscience.
Mhm.
So live blood analysis, which is also known as nutritional microscopy. This is a confusing one, and we can let you go pretty quick, no pressure. Live blood analysis is a brand. It's also known as nutritional microscopy. We do analyze the blood live, but we do not do live blood analysis, which confuses people. So the reality is live blood analysis, the big companies don't see it as a consistent science, so they're not interested in making expensive tools for it, which is unfortunate for us.
Yeah.
So, but it's all what it's supposed to be. We're working with a company in England now, and I think we may have a good scope. We'd love to develop something, a slide scanner, where if we could get one high definition image of a drop of your blood where we can expand and zoom in, that would be a game changer for us. So if anyone listening wants to help us with that, no pressure. Yeah, but good stuff, Clive. Anytime you have a question, we're here as a resource. If you want to have us on again, we'd love to chat some more with you.
Well, that's absolutely fabulous, Adam and Josh. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
All right,
Our
appreciate it,
pleasure.
Clive.
You too.
Bye.
Hasta luego.
Yeah, exactly.